What happened after the burial of a young Muslim girl shocked an entire community and left even the most skeptical people speechless. At first, it seemed like a tragic but ordinary funeral: tears, prayers, silence, and soil covering a life taken too soon. No one imagined that the real story would begin after the mourners had left the graveyard. The girl was known in her neighborhood as kind, quiet, and deeply religious. She helped her mother at home, respected elders, and was loved by children for her gentle nature. Her sudden death raised questions, but the family, already drowning in grief, chose silence over suspicion. According to Islamic tradition, she was buried quickly, wrapped in a simple white shroud, her face turned toward the Qibla. Prayers were offered, and the grave was closed. That night, however, something unusual happened. Residents living near the graveyard reported hearing dogs barking uncontrollably. At first, no one paid much attention. Stray dogs were common in the area. But the barking didn't stop. It grew louder, angrier, almost frantic. Some people claimed the dogs were digging at the ground with an intensity they had never seen before. By early morning, a horrifying sight awaited the caretaker of the cemetery. Several dogs had dug deep into the freshly buried grave. The soil was scattered everywhere. The grave was partially open. Panic spread instantly. People rushed to the site, expecting the worst, that the body had been desecrated. But what they discovered was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. When authorities were called and the grave was officially reopened, the atmosphere turned heavy and suffocating. Even hardened officials struggled to remain composed. The body of the girl showed signs that contradicted everything the family had been told. She had not died the way they believed. Marks on her body raised serious questions. Medical experts quickly confirmed that her death was not natural. Evidence suggested severe abuse that had occurred before her death. The horrifying truth slowly came out. The girl had been a victim of a crime that had been deliberately hidden. Someone had tried to bury the truth along with her body. As the investigation unfolded, the community was shaken to its core. Whispers turned into cries of anger. How could something so cruel happen in a place that claimed honor, faith, and morality? How could a young girl suffer in silence while everyone around her failed to notice, or chose not to? The most chilling part of the story was the role played by the dogs. Many people began asking the same question: why did the dogs dig up the grave? In Islamic belief, animals are often seen as creatures of pure instinct, unable to lie or deceive. Some scholars believe that Allah sometimes uses His creation to reveal hidden truths when humans fail to do so. The dogs, guided by instincts beyond human understanding, uncovered what people tried so hard to bury. To many, it felt like divine justice. The girl's family was devastated, not only by her death, but by the guilt of not knowing her pain. Her mother collapsed when she learned the truth, repeating the same words over and over: "Why didn't she tell me?" Her father, broken and ashamed, demanded justice, his grief turning into rage. Soon, suspects emerged. People who were once trusted became targets of investigation. A familiar face, someone close to the family, was arrested. The betrayal cut deeper than the crime itself. The idea that evil can hide behind respectability horrified everyone. Social media exploded with outrage. People shared the story across platforms, calling it a reminder that silence protects criminals, not victims. Activists demanded stronger protection for girls and harsher punishment for abusers. Religious leaders spoke from pulpits, emphasizing that Islam stands for justice, dignity, and the protection of the innocent, not honor-based silence. This was not just one girl's story anymore. It became a symbol of how society often ignores warning signs. A symbol of how victims are silenced by fear, shame, and misplaced ideas of honor. A symbol of how truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of coming to the surface. Even through something as unexpected as dogs digging a grave. Psychologists later explained that many victims, especially young girls, remain silent due to emotional manipulation and fear. They are taught to obey, to endure, to protect the family's honor, at the cost of their own lives. This tragedy exposed how dangerous that mindset can be. The cemetery, once quiet and forgotten, became a place of reflection. People visited the girl's grave not just to pray, but to promise themselves they would do better, for their daughters, sisters, and sons. The dogs were eventually driven away, but their role could not be erased from the story. In conversations, people began saying, humans failed her, but animals did not. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. Court proceedings began, and the truth was recorded officially, no longer just rumors and whispers. The girl's name became known across the country, not as a victim alone, but as a wake-up call. This story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How many secrets are buried with the dead? How many cries for help go unheard? And how many times does truth need to claw its way out of the ground before we finally listen? The tragedy of this young Muslim girl reminds us that faith without justice is empty, and silence in the face of cruelty is a form of betrayal. Her story hurts, but it also teaches. Because sometimes, when humans close their eyes, the truth finds another way to be seen. After the truth began to surface, the atmosphere in the town changed completely. What was once a quiet community became restless, uneasy, and filled with suspicion. People looked at each other differently now. Trust had been shattered, parents held their children closer, and whispers echoed in every street and home. The question on everyone's mind was terrifyingly simple. If this could happen to her, could it happen to anyone? Investigators dug deeper, and with every layer uncovered, the story became darker. It was revealed that the girl had shown subtle signs of distress weeks before her death. Teachers remembered her sudden silence in class. Neighbors recalled seeing fear in her eyes. Some even remembered hearing cries at night, but no one acted. Everyone assumed it was a family matter. That assumption now felt like a collective sin. The medical reports confirmed what many feared. The injuries were not accidental. They told a story of prolonged suffering, of pain endured quietly, of a child trapped between fear and obedience. Experts stated that had the truth come out earlier, her life could have been saved. That single statement broke the hearts of thousands who followed the case. Her room was searched. What investigators found there added another painful layer to the tragedy. Hidden beneath her mattress was a small notebook. Its pages were filled with scattered thoughts, broken sentences, and drawings that screamed distress. In shaky handwriting, she had written about fear, about praying for help, about wanting everything to stop. There were no names mentioned, only pain. That notebook became one of the strongest pieces of evidence. For her family, it was unbearable. Each page felt like a message from beyond the grave, asking a question that could never be answered: why didn't you see me? The suspect, now in custody, denied everything at first. Calm, confident, and disturbingly composed, he claimed innocence and blamed rumors. But evidence does not bend to lies. Forensic details, witness statements, and behavioral patterns began closing in. Slowly, the walls around him started collapsing. During interrogation, a moment came that sent chills through everyone present. When asked about the dogs that dug up the grave, he went silent. Psychologists later said that moment revealed guilt more than any confession. The truth had come out in a way no human had planned, and it terrified him. As court proceedings began, public attention exploded. News channels debated the case day and night. Social media turned into a battlefield of anger and grief. Hashtags demanding justice trended for weeks. People from different countries, religions, and backgrounds spoke up, not just for her, but for every silenced victim. Religious scholars addressed the issue directly, breaking long-standing taboos. They emphasized that Islam strictly condemns abuse and commands the protection of the weak. They reminded people that silence in the face of injustice is itself a crime. Many admitted, with painful honesty, that cultural traditions had been wrongly placed above human life. This admission marked a turning point. Families began talking, really talking, with their children. Schools organized counseling sessions. Mosques opened their doors for awareness programs. For the first time in a long while, fear was being replaced with dialogue. But justice was still far away. The trial was long and emotionally exhausting. Every hearing reopened wounds. The girl's parents attended silently, their faces hollow with grief. Her mother aged years and months. Her father barely spoke, but when he did, his words shook the courtroom. He said, "I buried my daughter thinking I was honoring her. But the truth was buried with her too. If animals hadn't uncovered it, we would still be blind." That statement spread everywhere. The defense tried to shift blame, questioning evidence and intent. But public pressure made it impossible to manipulate the case quietly. Independent observers were present. International human rights groups monitored the trial. This was no longer just a local tragedy, it was a global symbol. Outside the courtroom, people held candles and photos of the girl. They didn't know her personally, but they felt connected to her pain. Survivors of abuse began sharing their own stories, inspired by the courage her story had unknowingly given them. Many said the same thing: if she had lived, she would have spoken. We will speak for her. The dogs, strangely enough, continued to appear near the cemetery for weeks. Some people claimed they sat quietly near her grave, almost guarding it. Whether coincidence or imagination, it deepened the belief that something beyond human understanding had intervened. Eventually, the verdict came. The court ruled in favor of justice. The accused was found guilty, sentenced to severe punishment. The courtroom erupted, not in celebration, but in tears. Justice had been served, but nothing could bring her back. Her parents did not smile. Because justice does not erase loss. In the aftermath, the government announced reforms. Hotlines were established, laws were tightened, awareness campaigns were launched nationwide. While critics argued it was too late, many agreed that if even one life could be saved, her death would not be meaningless. Years later, her grave is no longer just a resting place. It has become a reminder. A reminder that truth cannot be buried forever. A reminder that silence can kill. A reminder that even the smallest voice deserves to be heard. People still tell her story, not for shock value, but as a warning. Parents tell it to teach vigilance. Teachers tell it to encourage observation. Activists tell it to demand accountability. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind moves through the cemetery, locals say they remember the barking that changed everything. Not as a sound of horror anymore, but as the sound of truth refusing to stay buried. Time moved forward, but the weight of the tragedy did not fade. Long after the court verdict, the town carried a quiet heaviness, as if the air itself remembered what had happened. Life resumed on the surface, shops opened, children returned to school, prayers echoed from mosques, but something inside people had changed permanently. The girl's home became unbearably silent. Her room remained untouched for months. Her clothes still hung where she had left them. Her schoolbooks lay open, frozen in the middle of unfinished lessons. Her mother often sat on the edge of the bed, holding the notebook that had revealed so much pain too late. She read the same lines again and again, searching for signs she might have missed, hoping, somehow, that the words would change. They never did. Grief counselors later explained that this kind of loss creates a unique kind of pain, not only mourning a child, but mourning the chance to protect them. The parents lived with a constant echo of, if only. If only they had asked more questions. If only they had listened differently. If only they had broken the silence sooner. That guilt became a quiet prison. Yet, something unexpected began to happen. Survivors started coming forward. At first, it was anonymous messages sent to local organizations, short, trembling confessions from people who had carried their pain for years. Then came phone calls. Then visits. Women, men, even elderly individuals shared stories they had never told anyone before. Many said the same thing. They were inspired not by the tragedy itself, but by the fact that the truth eventually came out. They realized something powerful. Secrets survive only in silence. The girl, who had never been able to speak openly in life, had given others the courage to speak after her death. Support groups formed quietly at first, then openly. Counselors volunteered their time. Lawyers offered free consultations. Religious leaders, once hesitant, now stood firm, addressing abuse clearly and without excuses. They reminded communities that protecting victims is not dishonor, it is duty. Slowly, the culture of silence began to crack. Schools introduced new policies. Teachers were trained to recognize emotional distress. Safe spaces were created where children could talk without fear. Parents were encouraged to listen without judgment, to believe before doubting. These changes did not erase the past, but they began to shape a safer future. The girl's name became known far beyond her town. Documentaries were made, articles were written, her story was shared not as a rumor, but as a lesson. Each retelling carried the same warning: evil often hides where people refuse to look. Her grave, once a place of fear, became a place of reflection. People visited not out of curiosity, but out of respect. Some left flowers, others left notes, apologies, prayers, promises to protect their children better. Many stood in silence, thinking of their own families, their own unspoken truths. The dogs never returned after that season. Some said their task was finished. Whether coincidence or belief, people felt that a chapter had closed, but the message remained. Years later, when journalists asked the father what justice meant to him now, he answered quietly, "Justice did not give me my daughter back. But it stopped her suffering from being meaningless." That sentence captured everything, because the true legacy of the girl was not her death, it was the change it forced into the world. Psychologists studying the case later noted something profound. They said that society often reacts strongly to visible violence but ignores hidden pain. This tragedy exposed how emotional and psychological abuse can be just as deadly, especially when combined with fear and isolation. The girl had lived among people, yet she was alone. That realization haunted many. It forced parents to reconsider authority. It forced communities to rethink honor. It forced leaders to confront uncomfortable truths about power, control, and denial. And it reminded everyone of a simple but painful reality: children do not need perfection, they need safety. On anniversaries of her death, candlelight gatherings are still held. There are no speeches filled with anger anymore. Instead, there are conversations, honest ones. Survivors speak, counselors educate, parents listen. This is how healing begins. Not by forgetting, but by remembering correctly. The girl is remembered not as a victim buried in silence, but as a voice that emerged from the ground when no one expected it. Her story proved that truth does not always come from courts or confessions. Sometimes, it comes through instinct, through nature, through events that shake people awake. Through barking in the dark. Through disturbed soil. Through a secret that refused to stay hidden. In the end, this is not just her story. It is a warning to every society that prioritizes reputation over reality. It is a lesson for every family that mistakes obedience for safety. It is a reminder that faith, culture, and morality lose all meaning when they fail to protect the innocent. The world did not become perfect after her story, but it became more aware. And awareness saves lives. If even one child speaks up sooner because of her. If even one parent listens more carefully. If even one community chooses truth over silence. Then her life, though painfully short, changed the world in a way many longer lives never do. And that is why her story continues to be told. Not to scare, not to accuse, but to awaken. Because some truths are so powerful, even the earth cannot keep them buried.